Well, we wasn't but very little bit, I guess. Less time to take to tell it, probably. Well, I walked over and looked down in the hole there. Thought I heard something kind of bubbling just a little bit, and looked down there and here this frothy oil was starting up. And it was just breathing like, coming up and sinking back with the gas pressure, and it kept coming up and over the rotary table, and each flow a little higher and a little higher and a little higher. Finally, it came up with such momentum that it just shot up clear through the top of the derrick, and of course many rocks and sand and shell, it was a conglomerate we was in. It had blown through this crevice. Stream at least twice the height of the derrick, and stayed that way until I don't know, can't remember now whether it was the next morning, about 3 o'clock, but I think it was the following morning, about 3 o'clock, that it commenced to die down, and got down to where the flow was only spasmodic up to the swivel board, the derrick board there, about 35 feet up. So it stayed that way from along early in the morning until about 10 or 10 after that morning, when it tore loose again with a vengeance. It blew out all kinds of rock again, and from that time on, after it cleaned itself then, it stood at that steady flow, with estimated at 70 to 100,000 barrels a day up to the time we shut it in, which is on January 10th.
It came in on January the 10th.
Or January 20th, I mean.
In 10 days it was flowing.
Yeah, 10 days.
Mm-hmm. Where were you when the first flowing started?
Well, we was all, Peck and I were on the floor, and Kurt was up at the double bore. He was the derrick man, you see, up taking and putting the elevators on to lower this drill pipe in the hole.
How did you get word, Mr. Lucas, then?
Well, after we got our sense quieted down a little bit, I imagine we were rather excited. Of course, at first, when I went down there to see all that mud and the drill pipe ruined, however, it was Mr. Gailey's drill pipe, Guffey and Gailey's, but it was our responsibility. We didn't know how much of the hole was ruined or what was in. I rather expect, and I was pretty disgusted. Of course, after the oil came in then and kept flowing and flowing, why, as soon as we lasted a little while, I wouldn't say how long, why, sent Peck on the run down to Mr. Lucas again. So when he got down to Lucas's house, why, Miss Lucas said, well, he's in town, but I'll try to get him. So she located him at Louis Meyer's dry goods store there, what he kind of made headquarters at when he was hanging around town. And of course, he immediately jumped in his old buckboard with his old horse and beat it for Spindletop. And he came in due time and over the hill there when we could see him, and the horse in a dead run. Well, and he got so close, so he just, well, it was a gate down there, I guess. But anyway, the old horse stopped and Cap fell out and ran up. Of course, he was very heavy, you see, and by the time he got to me, he was just about out of breath. And he says, oh, what is it? And when I said, well, it's oil, Captain, well, he just grabbed me and said, thank God, thank God. So that was the ending of the Captain's expression there, you see.
Well, how soon did the people start arriving at the well?
Oh, I dare say it wasn't exceed an hour. Of course, these ranchers, there's the carpenters, were working on this barn nearby. Of course, they didn't come any closer. They stood up there and looked around, but they didn't come down to ask us what it was or anything about it. I think they were all frightened probably, but it wasn't long till, I dare say it wasn't over an hour maybe, the people began to come. Some heard it, you see. You could hear this roar. And that afternoon they came in all kinds of conveyance. A lot of them walked, you see. Young fellas walked out there from town and come on horseback and wagons and buggies. And of course, they all came from practically everybody came from town, because from where we were, for miles and miles, there wasn't another dwelling. There wasn't anything but this big ranch, except these teamsters were working over there and the few carpenters that was on this barn. That afternoon, there was a big crowd there.
How did the people behave as they watched?
Well, I think very well. You see, there was a fence. This big pasture, or what was going to be a rice farm, was all fenced. It had been a big cattle pasture, you see. And they had a fence between the adjoining property, but not over 150 feet, I don't suppose, away. And people would come to that fence, and that was close enough, because when the wind was in the direction, they couldn't come that close, you see, because the oil was traveling, that would go up there in this spray, and the wind would carry it for miles. Even take the buildings in Beaumont in a short time were all discolored. But a lot of that was from the fumes from the gas, the sulfur gas that tarnished the paints, and every house in Beaumont, I dare say, had to be repainted after that 10 days flow. Of course, a lot of it may have been for this spray that was carried in the wind, you see, and would settle.
How did you protect the well from fire?
Well, Providence probably helped us there too. But on one morning, I think it was a Sunday morning, Kurt was one of the main watchmen, you see, and he kind of was in charge of fare part-time, and I was. And we'd, as soon as we realized that this first day, why, we realized something had to be done. So Captain Lucas had us, and he did too, probably. Went around and picked up fellas that wanted to work and be his watchmen. So we stationed them west, and several of them around, and east. We didn't have any south because there wasn't anybody to come in from the south. So we had these watchmen there to keep people from smoking and ask them not to, and they were very good about it. But I think it was this Sunday morning about 10 o'clock or something like that. I know I was coming up the hill on a horse. I'd been someplace, and I noticed this smoke burst up, you see, all of a sudden. Well, by the time I got there, Kurt had the presence of mind. He was standing there talking, see, with these people. He had the presence of mind to jerk off his coat and commence fighting this fire. Somebody on a horse there had dropped a match and had gotten started. But then the other fellows jerked their saddle blankets from under their saddles and helped him fight it out. Well, when I got there, Kurt was out of breath. I remember just as well as ordered this morning. He was all smoked up, and this smoke and oil smoke had gotten all over him. His clothes were all dirty, and coat was ruined, and he was out of breath. He'd fought it, you see, but through the help that he got there. Of course, a lot of them ran, you see. But some of these came back and helped him out, and they beat it out with saddle blankets and coats. That was the only real close call we had.